joy of like learning things. And for me, like I love anatomy, I love figurative work, and I love color and form. So just watching, going to a museum and looking at a painting and seeing how the artist models light across flesh and seeing the subtle shifts in temperature in the skin tone with like the really hot reflected lights and the really cold shadows and the really cool, like that's what makes me all excited.
Hi guys, I know I haven't been making a lot of videos lately. I've been pretty busy with my schoolwork and my college applications. I'm excited to be back making more videos, and I have a lot of pretty cool interviews coming up pretty soon, and I'm excited for you guys to watch them. And if you're new to this channel, welcome. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. And my name is Janet. Welcome to Janet Asks. And on this channel, I basically interview a lot of different industry professionals and I ask them for their advice and just talking to them about their careers. And this is to help a lot of high schoolers like myself in the difficult process of choosing the right career. And if you're interested, please like and subscribe. Thank you so much. And so let's get on with the video. This was actually a profession that one of my subscribers suggested. Thank you so much, MX. And if you guys have any specific careers that you want to learn about, please comment down below or DM me through Instagram and I will give you guys a shout out in my next videos. And I am very excited for you guys to meet our special guest today. Her career is very fascinating and she will give amazing advice. So let's welcome Emily. Hi, Emily. How are you doing?
Hi, Jana. I'm good.
Um, for those who don't know, Emily is a medical illustrator that works in Osso Vr, and I'm very excited to learn about her career, and I hope that you guys are too. So, I've said in my intro that you are a medical illustrator, but can you explain a little bit more about what that is and what do you do as a medical illustrator?
So medical illustration is a very tiny field. There are only 4 graduate programs in North America that offer a master's in medical illustration. Johns Hopkins is the one that I went to, but the other ones are University of Augusta, University of Toronto, and UIC, University of Illinois in Chicago. But it's a very, like I said, it's a very tiny field, but within the field, there's kind of a lot of things that you can do. Traditionally, it's always been illustrating textbooks, doctor education, patient education. So when you go to the doctor's office and you see the posters on the wall, that was designed by a medical illustrator. If a doctor gives you a handout or shows you a video about a procedure that you are about to undergo, those illustrations were done by a medical illustrator. Even science textbooks, biology textbooks, chemistry textbooks, all of the illustrations in there were done by a medical illustrator. Today, the field is branching out into virtual reality and augmented reality are kind of the 2 newest fields in medical illustration. Medical legal is also a big field. So if there's a court case where someone was injured or injured on the job, one of the attorneys will often hire a medical illustrator to explain the injuries to the jury. So I work for a company that, as you said, called Osso Vr, that is currently creating virtual reality simulations to train surgeons. So primarily orthopedic surgeons right now, but our CEO is an orthopedic surgeon and very interested in gaming, which is how he got into this. But so we are building virtual reality, which is like which I have behind me, but on, the Oculus headset, to train orthopedic surgeons so that by the time they get to a patient during their residency, when they're in training, they will already have, that much knowledge to bring to the operating room, and they're not starting, at square one in the operating room.
Wow, that's really cool. Like before we met, I didn't actually really know too much about what it was, what the career was, but I didn't know how like much technology went into it. And I actually was studying biology as a junior last year, and I didn't like all. I had no idea that all of the pictures and diagrams of the in the biology textbooks were done by medical illustrators and
Oh,
yeah, that's really cool. And I think becoming an artist, as I'm like working towards to, takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. So, can you kind of discuss your career journey starting from your college and why did you decide to become a medical illustrator?
yeah, absolutely. My career journey has not at all been linear. It's been kind of all over the place, but that's kind of an experience that I really appreciate and that I think has brought like a very broad base of knowledge to what I'm doing now. But when I was an undergrad at RISD, I majored in illustration and I minored in art history. And I always kind of had like one foot in the children's book illustration world and one foot in the fine art world. And in portraiture in particular. But I loved figurative art. I loved portrait painting. I was really fascinated by people. I still am. And then also I loved visual storytelling and children's book illustration and how kind of like fun and whimsical that was. So I did both, and then I graduated kind of trying to pursue both and not really sure what to do. And I kind of floundered around for a couple of years and taught like art summer camp, but didn't do anything kind of significant. And then I went back and I got my MFA from the New York Academy of Art. And I was very inspired to go there. I found out about the school from my anatomy professor in undergrad. His name was Jeff Hesser. And he is the one who kind of really sparked my love of anatomy and a figurative work. And I learned a lot in his class. And so he graduated from and also taught at the New York Academy of Art. So I applied there and I went there for 2 years, and it was a wonderful experience. I loved it. I was like, I've met my people. It's one of the really only two that I know of graduate programs, MFA programs in the country that have a very rigorous, like academic traditional course load. So I did a lot of anatomy, did a lot of cast drawing, did a lot of kind of very traditional oil painting, figurative painting. And that was a lot of fun. And I found out, I didn't even know about medical illustration. I did not know the field existed at all until I was 27, until like right around the time I graduated with my MFA. And so yeah, I was like finishing up my MFA, and then I found out about this Hopkins program, and I was like, oh, that sounds like really interesting, even though I literally just finished grad school. But I was not able to go back to school immediately anyway. So I taught for 8 years. I'm also married. My husband is in the Navy, so we moved a lot back and forth between San Diego and New England, Rhode Island. And so I taught undergraduate classes at a small college in San Diego, and then I taught undergraduate, I taught RISD continuing education classes for years. So I taught adult learners of all ages. And then when I was back in Rhode Island, I got hooked up with a surgeon who was teaching a medical illustration undergraduate class, kind of intro to medical illustration at Brown and RISD for like both schools. And so I kind of connected with him, and I ended up adjuncting there and kind of co-teaching this class with him. And he taught like the medical surgical aspect of it, and I taught like the students how to draw. And these were, freshmen, sophomores, some pre-med, some art students, some biology majors, kind of across the board. So that was a lot of fun. And I did that for 2 years, 3 years. And then while I was in Rhode Island was the first time I kind of had the opportunity to go back and fulfill the science prerequisites that I needed in order to apply to the medical illustration master's program. So I took those 4 science classes at Rhode Island College, and then I applied to the Hopkins program, and I ended up going there. And I just graduated from there about a month ago. So I'm like very freshly out of that program.
Mm-hmm. It's really cool that you went and also taught at such a top art schools like RISD, and that's actually one of my dream schools. And how do you think your former experiences of being an art educator or art teacher, how do you think that has helped you in your own career as a medical illustrator at Osso Vr?
That is a great question. And I think it's helped a lot. I think it was also very interesting for me going back because I spent like my entire adult life basically as either a teacher or a student. And so it was interesting for me going back and being a student in graduate school for 2 years after having taught for 8 years. It gave me like a really good perspective on the student teacher relationship, and then also on like critiques and just good perspective. But taking that into Osso Vr, and I'm still in training. I have not like done a lot at the company yet. I've been there for a month, but the company is all about obviously it's an educational tool. It's to train surgeons and improving the training process, improving the educational experience. And the thing that I'm kind of most interested in personally is the role of empathy in providing effective feedback and how necessary empathy is to create an effective and enjoyable learning experience. And I know that's something that's really important to Osso, which is really why I wanted to teach there. They gave a presentation at my school at Hopkins for us, the 7 of us graduates, and they really emphasized the importance of empathy in their company culture and the role of empathy in in an educational environment and in giving effective feedback. And that really kind of struck a chord with my background as an educator and the importance that I place on empathy in the classroom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, once again, about being a teacher and or educator, like what kind of advice would you want to give to high schoolers like myself who are interested in going into an art school and becoming an artist or illustrator? Like what kind of things should we think about before considering making that decision?
That is a good question. I don't know about things to think about, but just things to keep in mind. It is a difficult career path, but it's also a very interesting one.
Yeah.
Everyone that I know from undergrad has eventually, and not everyone stays in the arts. I have my roommate went on to become a social worker. I have another roommate who does a lot of freelance illustration and has her work licensed on like luggage and journals and stationery. And another one of my friends is now a full-time children's book illustrator. Um, and then I kind of went the medical route and I'm now in, making VR. So it's like very interesting, but everyone that I know has eventually kind of found their groove and found their niche. But I'd say the biggest thing to kind of like remember as you're going through the, whatever kind of artistic training or school you're in, is that one, there's no destination. I was at a Portrait Society of America conference, and this painter named Michelle Dunaway said, your vision, and this really like kind of struck with me, but your vision will always precede your ability. Mm-hmm. So right now I'm making the work that in my head I saw like 3 years ago. Like 3 years ago, if I'd been making this work, I would have been like very pleased with myself. But like now I'm not, because in my head, I'm thinking about and envisioning the work that I will be making 3 years from now. So you're like always working towards a moving target. So the sooner you can just accept and embrace the fact that you will always be dissatisfied, like the easier it becomes, because you always think like, oh, if I can only do this, like, oh, like if you let your disappointment in your work affect your motivation, then like you'll never get anything done. So just accept the fact that like, okay, like I am constantly growing, constantly getting better, constantly improving. Like don't ever be discouraged in yourself. As long as you are learning and moving forward, then like you are on the right path. And then also don't, if you leave a critique feeling very badly about yourself, and this is one of the things that I kind of realized as a student coming back after being a teacher for 8 years, but if you leave a classroom or a critique feeling very badly about yourself, that is not a reflection of you and your work. That is a reflection of your teacher's ability. Like, a teacher should never leave you feeling badly. If they have, they did not do their job right. A teacher's job is to guide, but also to inspire and motivate and support. So if you feel badly about your work because of what a teacher said, that's not on you, that's on them.
Yeah, that makes sense. And what you said about like the like always wanting to improve, like that I've learned over in my high school years that how to use that as like a way to push myself, and I think that yeah, there can be both good and bad sides to it, and I think what you said were really helpful, and it's also really cool to know that like even if you go in the art direction, you can go to a lot of many different other fields as well. Like a lot of people think if you do art, you're just gonna be like in fine art or like something like plain art, but that's not really true. And I'm glad that you said that. And so being an artist is something that takes a lot of different skills. So what are the most important art skills that you need in order to become a successful medical illustrator, and what are some non-art skills that you also need to be a good medical illustrator?
Some non-art skills, kind of basic design skills. I think basic design skills are super important for all fields of art and design. So understanding hierarchy, understanding scale and rhythm and balance and value, and how to, create a pleasing experience, whether it is a painting or a virtual reality simulation or a landscape design or like putting an outfit together. Just learning the basic design principles and design elements are super important, because that's kind of the backbone and foundation of our visual world. Non-artistic skills, also creative, just like creative problem solving, like learning how to think about a problem in different ways and learning how to kind of visually solve puzzles is really is good and is fun. But non-artistic skills, discipline, which kind of ties into that whole like don't allow yourself to get discouraged, just just keep putting one foot in front of the other and plowing forward. Time management is really important. Learning how to manage your time. So, and then there are lots of artists who've written on on the creative process and on like the kind of mental and emotional not tricks that we play on ourselves, but kind of stories you tell yourself to help you face those those problems. Ira Glass has a very good little video called The Gap, which is about that gap between our taste and our ability, and how difficult it is to like continue working in the face of realizing that your work is not living up to what you would like it to be. And then also Elizabeth Gilbert has done some really good TED Talks and wrote a really good book on creativity and how to kind of like continually nurture your creative spirit in the face of like all of these things that get in the way, like life.
So the next question is actually asked by one of my amazing subscribers, and her questions were, what are general career options for medical illustrators, and what kinds of people of other professions do medical illustrators work with?
That is a great question. So like I said in the beginning, a lot of, the traditional fields have always been textbook illustration, patient education, and a lot of medical illustrators are absolutely still doing that. Of my class, actually, a lot of us went to work for this virtual reality company, and that is kind of like the like new frontier of medical illustration. But one of my classmates went to work for a company doing doctor preparatory materials for like board exams. So she does illustrations for like professional education. And another one of my classmates went to a company that's doing 3D animation. So 3D animation is a big field, especially in like cell and molecular work, working for pharmaceutical companies. If you've ever seen like any commercials on TV about how, medications affect your like chemical receptors or whatnot. I don't do cell and molecular work, so that's all kind of beyond me, but all of that type of work is done by medical illustrators. So yeah, I had mentioned medical legal earlier, working for medical device companies. So creating the kinds of manuals and pamphlets and visual materials to train surgeons and doctors how to use medical devices is a big field in medical illustration, being the people who actually like model those medical devices in 3D modeling software. Yeah, I know illustrators from my program that work at like New England Journal of Medicine. If you go to their website, all of their little animations and illustrations are done by medical illustrators. At any like large institution, the Cleveland Clinic has medical illustrators on staff. Mayo Clinic has medical illustrators on staff. So yeah, it's like a very broad and diverse field. And the types of professionals that we work with, obviously a lot of doctors, primarily doctors and surgeons, but also depending on what kind of part of the field you're in, you might be working with lawyers and attorneys doing medical legal work. You might be working with people in the business world doing work for pharmaceutical companies, work for medical device companies. In my team at Osso, we have people who specialize in like customer experience, do that kind of like the business side of the business, I guess. So yeah, people in all sorts of kind of fields. Chemists, if you do cell and molecular work, you'll be working with a lot of like people who, chemists, pathologists, radiologists, people who interpret medical imaging and then rely on medical illustrators to use that medical imaging to convey information to patients or to another audience.
Really cool how there's so many different options for medical illustration, and yeah, that's really cool. And for almost any art or design profession, your portfolio is really important in applying for these jobs. Do you have any advice for what someone needs in a medical illustration portfolio when applying to a job?
I think it varies greatly depending on what job you're applying to.
Yeah.
And the type of work that I have done historically is like not anything at all like the type of work that I'm doing now. I had never, the software that I'm using now or that I will be using, I had never opened before. So you said during the interview process that like we care more about like your attitude and your experience and like your ability to learn. And we will teach you everything you need to know. Like we will train you on all the software. We don't expect you to come in knowing how to use that. That might be different at different jobs. So it's good to tailor your portfolio to the type of audience that you want to be working for. So if you really want to do cell and molecular work, then like make sure you have a lot of cell and molecular work in there. I do not ever want to do cell and molecular work again, so I did not put any of my cell and molecular pieces in there. I was like, nope, out of my portfolio. So I'm very interested in gross anatomy. So that is kind of what I really like. And I'm more interested in bones and muscles, the skeletal musculature system, than like the internal gooey bits. So GUI bits is not a technical term. So, but yeah, just, tailor it towards the kind of work that you're interested in doing.
Mhm. Yeah, I actually looked at your like Instagram and your website, and well, in my opinion, they all look pretty good, and like
Yeah.
I enjoy looking at anatomy drawings too, so I think those look pretty good, and yeah. So the art world is very vast and unpredictable, and art is also kind of it's an opinion, and success in the field looks really different for every single artist. So how do you eh, define success for an artist or a medical illustrator or illustrators in general?
Um, I mean, like, as you said, there are so many ways to define success. Um, uh, I'm not gonna lie, like monetary compensation does feel good in terms of just like validating, like, oh, what I do and contribute to the world. But I don't think that is should be kind of a measure of success. At least certainly, especially not in the art world, because it can be so difficult to like make a career, with fine art. A lot of people do. It's not impossible, like by any stretch of the imagination. And I know a lot of people that do. But I define success just as improvement, honestly, as enjoying your work, enjoying the practice, enjoying the journey, seeing growth over time, the just joy of like learning things. And for me, like I love anatomy, I love figurative work, and I love color and form. So just watching, going to a museum and looking at a painting and seeing how the artist models light across flesh and seeing the subtle shifts in temperature in the skin tone with like the really hot reflected lights and the really cold shadows and the really cool, like that's what makes me all excited. So when I'm working in my own work and I get to really like indulge in those really fun, subtle color interactions that I enjoy so much, like that is success to me, when I can just kind of like
Yeah.
indulge in like playing in those things that I really enjoy. And I know that like my understanding of that is so much further than it was, 5 or 10 years ago. And I know that like I just get to continue to enjoy doing that. And I'm going to learn so much more about it over the course of my career in life. Like that's what I don't know. I guess that's how I would define success.
Yeah, that's a pretty good way to define it, and I totally relate to like enjoying the museum artworks and like what you said. And um, well, so the art industry and almost any industry changes a lot over time, and once like high schoolers like the current high schoolers begin finding jobs, I'm sure the medical illustration industry will also be changing. So how do you see the industry changing, and how do you suggest current high schoolers in preparing for those changes?
In preparing for those changes, um, I think soft skills are honestly like more important than hard technical. I mean, hard technical skills are important, but like you'll be able to learn the software, and the software and the technology is always changing so rapidly, and it's changing like exponentially more rapidly the more, it just that it's by the time you learn something and master something, it's almost already out of date. So just the like I said, the design principles and elements don't change and aren't going to change. So really have a solid understanding of design principles and design elements, and then learning how to be flexible, learning how to, problem solve creatively, learning how to, stay calm when you're dealing with like a really frustrating technical issue, because that's inevitable.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, just kind of being being flexible and willing to continue to like learn over time as these things change
Yeah.
rapidly.
Yeah, that's actually pretty good advice. And yeah, we're actually at the final question. If you could give any final advice or words of encouragement to high schoolers or college students who are interested in becoming a medical illustrator or in the art slash illustration industry, what kind of advice would you give them?
Um, uh, One of the things that my undergrad professor told me that I just loved was find what you love and burn hot. Just like figure out what it is that you really love, and then just like go at that 100%. Um, Elizabeth Gilbert, one of my favorite writers, I just heard her on a podcast, and she said one of her pieces of advice was to follow your curiosity, and I thought
Mhm.
that was a really good, just kind of don't don't stress about the long term, and don't do something to please a teacher or because you think it'll make it look make be good for your career path or look good on a resume, because if you're not interested in it and you're not curious about it and your heart's not in it, then it's not going to sustain your
Mhm.
motivation. So just figure out what it is that you really want to do, and just like trust that eventually the pieces will come together and that it'll land you in the right spot. And if you're not happy where you land, like out of the gate, know that like things are, ever changing, and you
Yeah.
can always, change directions or change courses. Or I know lots of people in medical illustration who went to med school and then decided they didn't want to be a doctor, and so went to medical illustration. And I also know medical illustrators who graduated and then decided they wanted to become doctors. And people's careers and interests and are constantly changing, but that time was never time wasted.
Mhm.
All of the kind of foundation of knowledge that you spend building up over however many years will still inform whatever it is that you end up doing,
Mhm.
in a really an important way.
Mhm. Yeah, those are really good advice, and I especially like what your professor said. And those are really good points. And yeah, that's the end of our interview, and I really enjoyed learning about medical illustration. And I think all of what you said, all your points were really good, and I enjoyed talking to you.
Awesome, thank you. I really enjoyed talking with you too. I'm really glad that you reached out to me.
Thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned a lot from Emily about being a medical illustrator. And if you have questions, please comment down below. And if you want to learn more about another specific career, please also comment down below or DM me on Instagram. And if you enjoyed this type of video, please like and subscribe. And if you want to follow me for more video updates, please follow my Instagram. And yeah, thank you so much, and we'll see each other next time.